Zach Harris stared at his reflection in the darkened monitor, wondering when exactly he'd become such a cliché. 30 years old today, and here he was, debugging code at 7 p.m. on a Friday, while his friends blew up his phone about birthday plans. His phone buzzed again. This time Mike's message practically screamed through the screen. "Dude, we're coming over. No excuses. Your hermit days are over." "Great," Zach muttered, running a hand through his perpetually disheveled dark hair. He glanced around his apartment, a testament to organized chaos, with Star Wars posters competing for wall space, with framed coding certificates, and a collection of vintage sci-fi movie props that had cost him more than he'd ever admit to his mother. The doorbell rang just as he was considering pretending he wasn't home. Before he could execute his escape plan, Mike's voice boomed through the door. "We can see your lights on, Captain Introvert." Zach opened the door to find Mike, Danny, and Sarah grinning like they just won the lottery. Mike, built like the ex-college football player he was, practically bounced with excitement. Danny, perpetually dressed like a Silicon Valley wannabe in his hoodie and designer jeans, clutched a tablet to his chest. Sarah, the only one of them with anything resembling adult supervision skills, held a cake with 30 unlit candles. "Happy birthday, you antisocial genius!" Mike wrapped Zach in a bear hug that lifted him off his feet. "Thanks," Zach wheezed. "Oxygen becoming an issue here." They invaded his living room like a well-coordinated strike team. Sarah cleared a space for the cake among the coffee table's scattered electronics, while Danny connected his tablet to Zach's TV with practiced efficiency. "So," Mike said, throwing himself onto the couch, "we got you something special this year." Zach's danger sensors went off. "Please tell me it's not another blind date. The last one still has me blocked on every social media platform." "Better!" Danny's fingers flew across his tablet. "We found this exotic escort service." "You what?" Zach nearly choked on his beer. Sarah rolled her eyes. "Relax, it's more like a companion service. Very high-end, very discreet. The reviews were amazing." "The reviews?" Zach's voice cracked. "You guys actually— Wait, how did you even pay for— "Bitcoin," Danny said proudly. "The website was a bit sketch, but man, their profiles were incredible. We found one that's perfect for you. She's into all that sci-fi stuff you love." The doorbell rang again. Mike jumped up with a grin that would have made the Cheshire Cat proud. "That'll be her. Happy birthday, buddy." "No, no, no." Zach lunged for the door, but Mike beat him to it. The door swung open, and Zach's world tilted sideways. She was tall, Amazonianly tall, with skin that gleamed like polished jade in his apartment's harsh lighting. Her black hair cascaded past her shoulders in intricate braids threaded with what looked like actual starlight. The silver dress she wore seemed to flow like liquid mercury, highlighting curves that defied both gravity and probably several laws of physics. But it was her eyes that stopped his heart. They were completely silver, and they seemed to see right through him. "Greetings, human male designated as Zach Harris," she said, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place, in a formal tone that seemed more royal court than escort service. "I am Liane." She caught herself. "Just Laya. I have been informed that this is your day of birth celebration." The room went silent. Even Mike's eternal grin faltered. "That's, some really impressive makeup," Danny managed, circling Laya with undisguised fascination. "Like, seriously professional level. What kind of luminescent paint did you use for the skin?" Laya tilted her head, her silver eyes reflecting the light like mirrors. "Paint? I do not understand. This is my natural epidermis." Mike laughed nervously. "Wow, you guys really commit to the character, huh? The accent's a nice touch." Sarah was busy lighting the candles on the cake, trying to act like having a green-skinned woman in their midst was totally normal. "Come on in, Laya." We were just about to do the birthday traditions. Laya stepped into the apartment with a grace that made every movement look like a dance. She towered over Zach by at least half a foot, and when she smiled, he swore he saw actual sparkles in the air around her. "Ah yes, the ritual of the burning time markers?" Laya clasped her hands together. "On my world, we celebrate birth anniversaries by wrestling with sacred beasts, but I have studied your Earth customs extensively through your entertainment broadcasts. Zach found his voice. Your world? Indeed, Laya's face lit up. I particularly enjoyed the documentary series you call Star Trek, though I must say your representation of alien species is rather— She paused, searching for the word, limited in pigmentation options. Mike sidled up to Zach. Dude, when they said exotic, they really went all out with the sci-fi angle. This is like the ultimate geek fantasy. Come on, Sarah called. Cake's ready. They gathered around the coffee table, Laya watching with intense curiosity as they sang happy birthday. Zach couldn't help noticing how she mouthed the words, as if committing them to memory. Now you make a wish and blow out the candles, Sarah explained to Laya. Fascinating. The combustion of small flames combined with neural desire projection. Your species has such charming mystical practices. Zach leaned forward to blow out the candles, highly aware of Laya's presence next to him. Before he could exhale, she placed a hand on his arm. Her touch sent a weird, pleasant tingle through his entire body. Wait! Her silver eyes widened. You must first activate your deepest desire in your thought processes, or the ritual will be invalid. Right, Zach mumbled, suddenly very conscious of how close she was. Wouldn't want an invalid candle-blowing ritual. He closed his eyes, mostly to avoid staring at her any longer. What do you wish for when an impossibly beautiful green woman who thinks she's an alien is standing in your living room? The candles went out with a single breath, and everyone clapped. When Zach opened his eyes, Laya was beaming at him. Excellent execution of the ritual. Now I believe it is customary to present you with entertainment. She stood up in one fluid motion. I have prepared a traditional dance from my culture. Before anyone could respond, music seemed to materialize from nowhere. A haunting, ethereal melody that definitely wasn't coming from any of Zach's speakers. Leia began to move, and the air around her shimmered. Her dance was unlike anything Zach had ever seen. She moved as if gravity was optional, her silver dress catching light that shouldn't exist in his apartment. At one point, he could have sworn her feet weren't touching the ground at all. Mike, Danny, and Sarah sat in stunned silence. Danny had stopped recording with his phone, apparently forgetting it existed. When the dance ended, the mysterious music fading away like stardust, Laya gave a small bow. I hope this was an acceptable gift, Zach Harris. That was— Zach struggled for words. How did you do the music? And the floating? That was some seriously advanced tech. A red dot appeared on the wall behind Leia's head. Her playful demeanor vanished instantly. Oh no. Oh no, Zach repeated. What do you mean, oh none? A bolt of crimson energy blasted through his window, missing Leia's head by inches and leaving a smoking hole in his favorite Star Trek poster. She moved faster than humanly possible, tackling Zach to the ground as more bolts streaked through the air. His friends dove for cover, screaming. My sincerest apologies, Laya said, somehow managing to sound regal while lying on top of him in the middle of a firefight. It appears my pursuers have found me more quickly than anticipated. You wouldn't happen to have any plasma shields installed in your dwelling, would you? I barely have health insurance, Zach yelled back. Primitives, she muttered, then louder. Everyone, stay down. The Tarnarian Royal Guard's weapons are set to stun, but their aim is historically questionable. The what? Mike shouted from behind the couch. Another blast took out Zach's Xbox. He winced. He'd just downloaded a new game. I suppose now would be an appropriate time to mention, Laya said, rolling them both behind his recliner as more energy bolts filled the air, that I may have slightly misrepresented myself in your Earth Companion Service database. I am, in fact, the Crown Princess of the Tarnarian Empire, and I'm currently avoiding an arranged marriage to a rather unpleasant individual who collects wives like your people collect those small vinyl figures with oversized heads. Zach stared at her. You're telling me my birthday present is a runaway alien princess? Surprise? She offered a sheepish smile that somehow made her even more beautiful. If it helps, I genuinely enjoyed the cake ritual. More plasma bolts ripped through Zach's apartment, creating a light show that would have been impressive if it wasn't so terrifying. From behind the recliner, he watched in horror as his limited edition Mass Effect collectibles melted one by one. "We need to move," Laia announced, scanning the room with those mesmerizing silver eyes. "Your dwelling's structural integrity won't withstand sustained plasma fire." "My security deposit won't withstand it either," Zach muttered. Then louder, "Guys, head for the fire escape." Mike, Danny, and Sarah were already army crawling toward the window. Another blast hit Zach's gaming PC, sending sparks flying. "Not the PC," he groaned. "I just upgraded the graphics card." Laia gave him a puzzled look. "You care about primitive computing machinery at a time like this?" "That primitive machinery had my entire Steam library." She grabbed his arm, and Zach felt like he was being lifted by a hydraulic press. With seemingly no effort, Laia hoisted him over her shoulder like a sack of potatoes. "Your earth muscles are quite underdeveloped," she commented, sprinting toward the window while carrying him. "How do you defend yourself from predators?" "We usually just use Uber Eats." They reached the fire escape just as his friends were climbing down. More plasma bolts sizzled through the air, but Laia moved with inhuman speed, keeping Zach safely shielded. "Stop!" A mechanized voice boomed from above. "By order of the Imperial Guard." "Sorry, can't hear you over the sound of running away," Zach shouted back, surprising himself with his own bravado. Maybe it was the adrenaline, or maybe being carried by an alien princess had gone to his head. Instead of climbing down, Laia looked at him with what seemed like amusement. "Your attempt at defiant humor is charming, but inefficient." Before he could ask what she meant, she tightened her grip on him. "Hold tight." "Wait, what are you— Ah!" Laia jumped, not down one level, but off the entire fire escape. They fell 5 stories, Zach's stomach somewhere around his throat, before she landed with the grace of a gymnast, on her feet, still holding him, without even bending her knees. "Holy shit," Mike whispered from where the others huddled against the building. "That was—" Sarah started. "Awesome," Danny finished, already typing on his phone. "This is going straight to—" Laia snatched the phone with her free hand, crushed it like a paper cup, and handed it back. "No digital evidence, please. The fewer traces of my presence, the better." "Did you just— My new iPhone." More plasma fire rained down, scorching the pavement around them. "My car's around the corner," Mike said, pointing down the alley. "We should—" "No." Laia set Zach down but kept a protective stance in front of him. "You 3 should go. I've already endangered Zach's dwelling and his entertainment devices. I won't risk more of his companions." "We're not leaving you guys," Sarah insisted. "Yeah," Mike added. "What kind of friends would we—" A plasma bolt hit the dumpster next to them, turning it into modern art. "On second thought," Mike said, "maybe we should give the nice alien princess some space to handle her situation." Zach watched his friends disappear around the corner, then turned to Laia. "So, got a plan?" "Several, but most involve advanced technology your planet hasn't discovered yet." She grabbed his hand. "For now, we run." They sprinted through back alleys, Laia practically dragging Zach along. Despite the situation, he couldn't help noticing how warm her hand was, like holding a star. "You know," he panted, "when my friends said they got me an exotic date, I was thinking more dinner and a movie than running from space cops." Laia actually laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. "Your species uses humor to cope with stress." "Fascinating." "That, and I'm trying not to think about how I just lost my entire gaming collection." He risked a glance back. "Are those guys really going to keep shooting at us?" "The Imperial Guard?" "No, they'll switch to neural nets soon, much more efficient for capturing fugitive royalty." "Neural nets?" As if on cue, something whizzed past them and exploded into a crackling web of energy. Laia yanked Zach around a corner just in time. "Like that," she said, "though their aim remains questionably poor. My combat instructor would be appalled." They emerged onto a busier street, pedestrians giving them odd looks, though whether at Laia's appearance or their running, Zach wasn't sure. "We need a safe place," Laia said, scanning the storefronts. Her eyes lit up. "There! A food dispensary!" She was pointing at Joe's Pizza, a 24-hour hole-in-the-wall that Zach frequented during late coding sessions. "A pizza place? That's your idea of a safe house? The building has only one entrance, thick walls and, she sniffed the air, multiple heat signatures that will mask our thermal output, perfect for temporary shelter. Before Zach could argue, she pulled him inside. The familiar smell of garlic and tomato sauce hit him as Joe himself looked up from behind the counter. Zach, the usual. Joe trailed off, staring at Laia. Interesting costume. This is not a cosplay, Zach interrupted. She's, doing a character from Star Trek? Which one? New series, very obscure, limited release in Canada. Joe shrugged, clearly used to his geeky clientele. Whatever. Want your regular? Yes, Lai answered before Zach could. We require sustenance in circular form. They sat in a booth at the back, Laia positioning herself to watch both the door and the windows. Zach tried to process the last hour of his life. So, he said finally, you're really a princess? Crown princess of the Tarnarian Empire, yes. Though at the moment, I'm more of a, what's your Earth term? Runaway bride? And the guys trying to kill us? Oh, they won't kill us. Probably. The Imperial Guard is under orders to bring me back alive. My intended simply wants to add me to his collection. Collection? He believes having a wife from every major spacefaring race will increase his political influence. Her silver eyes narrowed. I disagreed with this career path. Joe arrived with their pizza, and Laia's entire demeanor changed. She stared at the steaming pie like it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. What is this magnificent creation? The aroma is intoxicating. It's just pepperoni pizza. Leia picked up a slice with the delicate grace of someone handling a sacred artifact. She took a bite, and her eyes literally glowed brighter. By the cosmic founders, she whispered, this is worth abdicating a throne for. Zach couldn't help but laugh. Wait until you try video games. Video games? She leaned forward, pizza momentarily forgotten. Are these the simulated reality entertainments I observed in your dwelling? The ones the plasma bolts destroyed? Yeah, though usually they are less destructive in real life. He paused. I can't believe I just said, in real life, to an actual alien. If it helps, I'm finding this situation equally surreal. I've studied Earth culture, but experiencing it firsthand is different. She took another bite of pizza, making a sound of pure joy. Your species may be technologically primitive, but your culinary achievements are outstanding. A thought struck Zach. Wait, how are you even speaking English? Universal translator. She tapped her throat. Though it occasionally struggles with your colloquialisms. What, for instance, is a noob? Before Zach could explain gaming terminology to an alien princess, the pizzeria's windows exploded inward. We need to return to your dwelling, Laia announced as they raced through back alleys, somehow managing to carry both Zach and the remaining pizza. It's the last place they'll expect us to go. 20 minutes and several close calls later, they stood in Zach's demolished apartment. His furniture was scorched, his collectibles were melted, and there was a distinctly Death Star-sized hole in his living room wall. Well, he sighed, there goes my deposit. Laia set him down gently, her silver eyes scanning the damage. I shall compensate you. The Royal Treasury has significant holdings in... What is your planet's primary currency? Bitcoin? Actually, I'm more worried about explaining this to my insurance company. Reason for claim, Alien Princess Firefight probably isn't on their standard forms. She tilted her head, studying him. You're remarkably calm for someone whose dwelling has been partially vaporized. Trust me, I'm screaming internally. Zach collapsed onto his miraculously intact couch. I just process stress through sarcasm. Laia sat beside him with unexpected grace. On my world, we process stress through ritual combat. Yeah, I'll stick with sarcasm. He glanced at her. So, what now? Now we wait. The Imperial Guard will establish a standard search pattern starting from the outer perimeter of the settlement. We have approximately 6 Earth hours before they return here. She took another bite of pizza. This gives us time for you to educate me about your entertainment systems. Zach looked at his melted gaming setup inside. Well, the TV still works, and I've got Netflix. Netflix? Her eyes literally brightened. I observed this term in my cultural studies. It involves chilling? Yes? Zach choked on nothing. Let's just start with the basics. Over the next hour, Zach introduced Laia to the concept of streaming services, trying not to focus on how she'd move progressively closer on the couch. Her natural body temperature was apparently higher than human normal, and he could feel the warmth radiating from her. These romantic comedies are fascinating, she declared, watching with intense concentration. Though I fail to understand why the humans don't simply declare their genetic compatibility and proceed with mating. It's complicated, Zach managed, very aware of how her shoulder was now touching his. Like how you're currently experiencing elevated heart rate and increased skin temperature in my presence, yet haven't declared your interest? What? Laia turned those mesmerizing silver eyes on him. My species has enhanced sensory capabilities. I can detect your physiological responses. A small smile played at her lips. They're quite flattering. That's really not fair, Zach protested. I can't tell what you're thinking at all. Can't you? She moved even closer, and suddenly the room felt very warm. I chose your dwelling for sanctuary when I could have gone anywhere on this planet. I've stayed here, watching these charming but primitive entertainment programs, when I should be planning my next move. Her hand found his. Perhaps your species' method of gradual courtship has some merit after all. Zach's brain short-circuited. Here he was, sitting on his partially destroyed couch, holding hands with an alien princess who could probably bench press his car, watching Netflix while space cops searched the city for them. And somehow it felt right. You know, he said finally, this is not how I expected my birthday to go. Laia laughed, that musical sound that made his heart do weird things. No? Is being pursued by interstellar law enforcement not a traditional Earth birthday activity? Usually it's just cake and bad karaoke. Karaoke? Her eyes lit up with interest. Another Earth ritual I must experience. But first, she stood, pulling him up with her. I believe I owe you a proper birthday dance, without plasma interruption this time. I don't really dance. She placed one hand on his waist, the other still holding his, and suddenly they were moving. That otherworldly music filled the air again, and Zach found himself being led in what felt like a waltz in zero gravity. On my world, Laia said softly, this dance is reserved for formal courtship ceremonies. The partners must maintain perfect harmony, or the gravitational fields become unstable. Are you saying we're actually floating right now? Only a little, she smiled. You're doing remarkably well for someone who doesn't really dance. They spun slowly in the middle of his ruined living room, and Zach realized he'd never felt more alive. The whole situation was insane. He should be terrified, or at least seriously concerned about the property damage. Instead, he was dancing with a woman who looked at pizza like it was a miracle and could probably win a fight with the Hulk. You know, he said, when my friends said they were getting me an escort service, I thought it was a terrible idea. And now I'm thinking it's either the best or worst birthday present ever. I haven't decided which. Laia's laugh sent shivers down his spine. Perhaps we should conduct further research to determine the answer. She pulled him closer. For science, of course. Of course, Zach agreed, his heart doing that weird thing again. Though maybe we should focus on the whole running from space cops situation first. They won't return for hours yet. Her silver eyes held a mischievous glint. Besides, I still haven't experienced this Netflix and chill ritual I've heard so much about. Zach was saved from having to explain that particular cultural misunderstanding by a loud rumbling from above. They both looked up as the ceiling trembled. Please tell me that's just really aggressive upstairs neighbors, he said. Laia's expression turned serious. They've brought in a gravitational disruptor. She grabbed his hand. We need to move. Now. What's a gravitational disrupt? The ceiling began to fold in on itself like paper. Right, Zach said. Moving now. Questions later. They ran for the door just as his apartment started to collapse in ways that definitely violated the laws of physics. Laia pulled him close, her strength the only thing keeping him upright as reality twisted around them. "For what it's worth," she said as they fled, "this has been my favorite Earth date so far." "This is your only Earth date so far." "Exactly." She flashed him that brilliant smile again. "Which means you've set a very high standard for future courtship activities." Zach couldn't help but laugh, even as they raced down the stairs with his apartment imploding behind them. "You know, most people just go to dinner and a movie for a first date." "Boring," Laia declared. "I much prefer this combination of mortal danger and romantic tension. Speaking of which," she stopped suddenly, spun him around and kissed him. It was like being struck by lightning, if lightning was warm and tasted faintly of pepperoni. For a moment, Zach forgot about the collapsing building, the space cops, and everything else. Laia pulled back, her eyes literally glowing. "There, now we can focus on escaping." That's your idea of helping me focus." "Did it work?" "I have no idea what my name is right now." She laughed and pulled him down the stairs just as another wave of gravitational distortion hit. "Then my technique requires more practice. We shall have to continue this research once we're safe." As they burst out into the night, running from what looked like a miniature black hole forming where his apartment used to be, Zach realized something. This was definitely the best birthday present ever, even if it did cost him his security deposit. They ended up at Sarah's apartment, which was exactly as organized and sensible as Zach's place wasn't. The living room looked like a Pottery Barn catalog had mated with a tech startup office, all clean lines and ergonomic furniture. "So," Sarah said, watching Laia examine her smart home setup with fascination, "alien princess, huh?" "Technically, I am the hereditary sovereign of the 7-star systems of Tarnarian," Laia corrected, poking at an Alexa device. "But princess is an acceptable approximation in your language." Mike and Danny sat on the couch, still looking shell-shocked. Danny kept glancing at his crushed phone mournfully. "And there are space cops after you," Mike said slowly, "because you're running away from an arranged marriage?" "To Prince Drakmore of the Centaurian Collective," Laia confirmed. She turned to Zach. "Your Earth entertainment device appears to be judging me. It keeps glowing red when I approach." "That's just Alexa," Sarah explained. "She's not actually—" "Who is this Alexa?" Laia's eyes flashed. "Zach, you mentioned communicating with her frequently." Zach couldn't help but grin. "Are you jealous of a smart speaker?" "Certainly not. I merely wish to assess potential rivals for your attention." She lifted the Alexa device, studying it, though her conversational capabilities are quite limited. The moment of levity shattered as a holographic image suddenly materialized in the center of Sarah's living room. A tall, impossibly handsome man with silver skin and eyes like liquid gold smiled down at them. "My dearest Lionera," he purred in a voice like velvet wrapped around steel. "Did you really think you could hide on this charming little mudball?" "Drakmore." Laia's voice turned cold. "I see you're still as subtle as a supernova." The hologram chuckled. "And you're still playing at Rebellion. Come now, beloved. This game has gone on long enough." His golden eyes fixed on Zach. "Though I must admit, your choice of companionship is amusing. A primitive programmer? Really?" "Hey," Zach protested before he could stop himself. "I have a very respectable GitHub rating." Drakmore's smile widened. "How quaint. He even attempts humor." The prince spread his arms magnanimously. "Laia, darling, you've made your point. Return to me now and I'll even let your little pet live." "He is not my pet," Laia snarled. Her skin began to glow with an inner light. "He is my chosen companion." "A companion?" Drakmore laughed. "My dear, I have companions from 12 different star systems. What makes this one special?" Laia moved faster than Zach could track. In one fluid motion, she grabbed Sarah's expensive coffee table and hurled it through the hologram. The image flickered but remained. "He understands something you never will, Drakmore. The meaning of choice." She straightened to her full height, every inch a princess. "And I choose him." The prince's handsome face hardened. "Choice? You speak of choice when you have a duty to your people? To our alliance?" His golden eyes narrowed. Very well. If you insist on being difficult. New holograms appeared. Dozens of them, each showing a different woman. They were all stunningly beautiful, representing what had to be different alien species. All wore the same defeated expression. My other wives send their regards, Drakmore said smoothly. They're quite eager to meet their new sister. Zack felt sick. These weren't just trophy wives. They were prisoners. You're collecting them, he realized. Like Pokemon cards, but with people. Pokemon? Drakmore looked puzzled. Ah, another primitive Earth reference. How charming. But yes, I suppose you could say I'm a collector. Each wife represents a political alliance, a consolidation of power. His smile turned predatory. And a Tarnarian princess would be the crown jewel of my collection. That's messed up, dude, Mike said. Even Danny looked disturbed. The opinions of primitives do not concern me. Drakmore waved a dismissive hand. Laia, you have one Earth rotation to surrender yourself. After that, his eyes locked onto Zack. Well, let's just say my bounty hunters are less interested in preserving life than the Imperial Guard. The holograms vanished, leaving the room feeling colder somehow. Well, Sarah said after a long moment, he seems nice. Laia's hands were clenched so tight her knuckles had turned a darker shade of green. I apologize. I never meant to involve any of you in this. Hey, Zack moved to her side, taking her hand. We're already involved, and there's no way we're letting Space Bluebeard add you to his collection. She looked at him, silver eyes wide. You would stand against a prince of the Centaurian collective? For me? I mean, I'd rather not get vaporized by bounty hunters, but yeah. He squeezed her hand. Besides, I still haven't shown you Star Wars. He has a point, Danny chimed in. You can't leave Earth without watching Star Wars. It's like a law or something. A small smile tugged at Leia's lips. Your species is remarkably stubborn. You have no idea, Sarah said. But first we need a plan, and probably more pizza. Pizza? Laia's eyes lit up, then she frowned. Though I fear Joe's establishment may be compromised. There's always Domino's, Mike suggested. No, 4 voices said in unison. As Sarah ordered from a different pizza place, Zack pulled out his laptop, the one piece of tech that had survived the apartment disaster. Okay, so we're up against space bounty hunters and an alien prince with a wife collection. What assets do we have? I retain access to certain royal accounts, Laia said, peering at his screen, though accessing them might alert the Imperial Guard. And I've got... Zack looked at his computer. Python scripts and a half-finished app? Your coding skills are not insignificant, Laia insisted. I observed your work earlier. The way you manipulate your primitive systems shows great potential. Thanks, I think. He pulled up his development environment. Though I'm not sure how Python is going to help against plasma weapons. Laia's eyes suddenly widened. Wait, your planetary defense networks. They're all connected through what you call the internet, yes? Yeah, but... Zack stopped. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? If Drakmore wants to play games, Laia's smile turned dangerous, perhaps we should introduce him to some Earth-style entertainment. You want me to hack alien technology? With Python? Why not? Their systems are designed to defend against quantum algorithms and neural networks. They won't expect... She gestured at his laptop. Whatever this adorably outdated technology is. You know, Zack said, you're really not great for my ego. She leaned down and kissed him, sending that now familiar electrical tingle through his body. Better? I've forgotten what we were talking about. Good. She straightened up. Now let me tell you about Centaurian security protocols. For the next few hours, Zack's world narrowed to lines of code while Laia leaned over his shoulder, explaining alien technology in terms that made his head spin. The others had gone to gather supplies, leaving them alone in Sarah's apartment. So their ships use quantum encryption, Zack muttered, typing furiously. But the communication protocols are based on gravity waves. Precisely, Laia's breath tickled his ear. Though I must say, watching you work with such primitive tools is oddly attractive. His fingers stumbled on the keyboard. You think watching me code is attractive? Hmm. She rested her chin on his shoulder. The way your mind adapts to new concepts, finding creative solutions? On my world, such intellectual flexibility is highly valued in potential mates. Is that why you're still here? The question slipped out before he could stop it. I mean, you could probably hide anywhere on Earth. Why stay with me? Laya was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice had lost its usual playful tone. When I first arrived on Earth, I thought your species was hopelessly primitive. No quantum drives, no neural networks, still arguing about whether aliens exist. She laughed softly. But then I met you, someone who faces the impossible with humor, who treats me as a person rather than a prize. She turned his chair around, forcing him to face her. Those silver eyes seemed to see right through him. Do you know what Drakmore's other wives all have in common? She asked. They're from advanced civilizations, species that have mastered interstellar travel. He sees them as worthy additions to his collection. But you, she touched his face gently, you create wonders with outdated technology. You make jokes in the face of danger. You offered to protect me when you could barely protect yourself. To be fair, Zach said, his heart racing, that was before I knew about the plasma weapons. And yet you're still here, she smiled. That's why I stay, because you remind me that true advancement isn't measured in technology. The moment was interrupted by Zach's laptop beeping. They both turned to look at the screen, where his code had finally finished compiling. Did it work? Laya asked. Only one way to find out. Zach hit enter. Across the city, every digital billboard suddenly flickered. Then one by one, they began displaying a message. Attention, Prince Drakmore. Your personal data has been downloaded to Earth servers, specifically your browser history. Do you really want the galaxy to know about your human cat videos obsession? Laya burst out laughing. You didn't. I did. Zach grinned. Turns out even alien princes can't resist cat videos. Also, he's been using Earth's internet for research. Not very carefully. This is brilliant. His reputation as a serious collector would be ruined if... She stopped, her expression changing. Zach, behind you. He spun around just as the air itself seemed to tear open. A figure stepped through, tall, silver-skinned, and dressed in what looked like liquid metal. Prince Drakmore was even more impressive in person, his golden eyes literally glowing with anger. Clever, he said, slow clapping, using my own curiosity against me. I must admit, I underestimated you, primitive. Thanks, Zach said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'd say I underestimated you too, but... Nope, you're exactly the kind of creep I thought you were. Drakmore's perfect features twisted into a snarl. You dare. He dares, Laya moved to stand between them, because he is more worthy than you will ever be. Worthy? Drakmore laughed. Look at him. No enhanced genetics, no neural augments, not even basic cybernetic improvements. He's practically an animal. Hey, Zach protested, I have a gym membership. I just don't use it much. And yet, Laya's voice dripped with disdain, this animal managed to hack your personal files with technology you consider primitive. What does that say about you, mighty prince? Drakmore's hand moved to his belt, where something that looked suspiciously like a weapon hung. Enough games. You're coming with me, Laya. Both our empires require this alliance. Your empire requires it, she corrected. Mine simply wishes to avoid war. But tell me, what happens when your other wives learn they're not alone? That they're just part of a collection? They know their place. Do they? Zach asked, an idea forming. Because according to your browser history, you've been researching Earth divorce lawyers. The prince's golden eyes widened fractionally. You're bluffing. Am I? Zach turned his laptop around, showing a screen full of legal websites. Looks like someone's worried about interstellar marriage laws. I wonder what would happen if this information reached your collection. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Zach's fingers hovered over the keyboard. One click, and every wife in your collection learns they have options. Earth might be primitive, but we're really good at spreading information. For a moment, no one moved. Then Drakmore smiled. a cold, calculating expression that made Zach's skin crawl. "Very well," the prince said softly. "You want to play games? Let's play." He pulled out what looked like a small crystal. "I challenge you to the right of combat. Winner takes Leia." "What?" Zach blinked. "No, we were doing the whole information warfare thing. I'm good at that. Combat, not so much." But Leia had gone pale. "The right cannot be refused once offered. It's one of our oldest laws." "See?" Drakmore's smile widened. "Even your precious primitive can't save you now. Unless ... he made a show of considering. He could forfeit, though that would mean immediate surrender of all claims to you." Zach looked between them. "I'm missing something here." "The right of combat," Leia explained, her voice tight, "is a sacred tradition. The challenged party chooses the form of combat, but it must be a true test of skill and courage." "Any form of combat?" Zach asked slowly. "Yes, but then I choose video games." The room went silent. Drakmore blinked his golden eyes in confusion. "What?" "Video games," Zach repeated more confidently. "Specifically, Super Smash Brothers. Best of 3 matches." "You can't be serious," the prince scoffed. "Why not?" "It's a combat simulator that requires skill, strategy, and quick reflexes. Unless ... Zach allowed himself a small smile. "Unless you're afraid to face a primitive on his own terms." Drakmore's perfect features twisted with rage. "I fear nothing." "Then it's settled." Zach turned to Leia. "This is allowed, right?" She was staring at him with a mixture of horror and admiration. "Technically, yes. The challenge party's choice must be honored as long as it meets the basic criteria of combat." "Perfect." Zach stood up, feeling more confident than he had any right to be. "There's a gaming cafe 2 blocks from here. Tournament rules, no items, final destination only." "I dot." Drakmore looked completely thrown off balance. "I will need time to study this combat system." "You have 1 hour," Zach said, channeling every movie villain he'd ever seen. "Don't be late." The prince disappeared through his portal, leaving behind only a faint smell of ozone and wounded pride. As soon as he was gone, Zach's knees gave out. He collapsed into the chair, shaking. "That," Leia said slowly, "was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen." "Probably both." He looked up at her. "Please tell me you have space medicine that cures anxiety attacks." Instead of answering, she kissed him. A deep, passionate kiss that left him dizzy for entirely different reasons. "What was that for?" "For being clever enough to choose a battlefield you understand," she smiled. "And for being foolish enough to risk everything for me?" "Yeah, about that." Zach ran a hand through his hair. "I should probably mention that I'm actually really good at Smash Brothers. Like, tournament-level good." Leia's eyes widened. "You mean..." "I mean your ex-fiancé just challenged me to what's basically my job." He grinned. "Never underestimate a nerd with something to prove." "You wonderful, brilliant fool." She kissed him again. "But we have less than an hour to prepare. What do you need?" "Energy drinks, my lucky controller, and..." He paused dramatically. "A quick lesson in how to trash talk in Tarnarian." Leia's laugh echoed through the apartment. My hero. The gaming cafe was packed. Word had spread fast about a mysterious tournament, and now every competitive gamer in the city seemed to be there, drawn by rumors of a strange challenger in liquid metal clothes. "Remember," Zach said as they entered, "no matter what happens, I shall not physically assault anyone who defeats you in digital combat," Leia recited, though she was eyeing the game controllers like potential weapons. "Even though on my world such challenges would end in honorable bloodshed." "Right, and we're trying to avoid bloodshed." The crowd parted as Drakmore materialized in the center of the room. He'd changed into what looked like formal combat armor, all flowing silver with pulsing golden lines. Several humans took pictures with their phones. "I have studied your primitive combat simulator," he announced. "I find it lacking." "That's what all button mashers say," Zach muttered, earning a few appreciative snickers from the crowd. They took their positions at the main gaming station. Drakmore stared at the controller in his hands like it might bite him. "The terms remain the same?" the prince asked. "Best of 3 matches determines Leia's fate." Her fate is her own, Zack corrected. We're just determining whether you leave her alone. Drakmore's golden eyes narrowed. You speak boldly for a primitive who's about to lose everything. Less talking, more playing. Zack selected his main character, Samus, because if he was going to fight an alien prince, he was going to do it with style. The first match started, and it became immediately clear that Drakmore had indeed studied the game. His movements were precise, calculated, almost robotic. He'd chosen Ganondorf, apparently appreciating the character's raw power. Your simulator is predictable, Drakmore said as he landed a powerful hit. Simply a matter of analyzing patterns. Yeah, Zack executed a perfect dodge roll into a combo. Analyze this. The crowd cheered as Drakmore's character went flying off the stage. The prince's perfect features twisted in confusion. That was not in the training scenarios. Welcome to competitive gaming, Zack grinned. Where humans have been breaking patterns since Pong. The first match ended with Zack's victory, but it had been closer than he'd like to admit. Drakmore learned fast. Between matches, Laia pulled Zack aside. You're holding back, she accused. What? No, I'm just... On my world, showing mercy to an opponent is considered an insult. Her silver eyes flashed. He certainly wouldn't show you any. I'm not showing mercy, Zack explained. I'm downloading his patterns, learning his style. Trust me. The second match began. This time, Drakmore was ready. His movements had evolved, becoming less mechanical and more unpredictable. He'd switched to Mewtwo, apparently deciding to fight science fiction with science fiction. Your species is fascinating, the prince said as their characters clashed. So limited, yet so adaptable. Perhaps I should add a human wife to my collection after all. The taunt had its intended effect. Zack's concentration slipped for a moment, and Drakmore capitalized with a devastating combo. Zack! Laia's voice cut through his frustration. Remember what you told me about staying calm in raids? He couldn't help but smile. Trust her to use his own gaming advice against him. But Drakmore won the second match, evening the score. The crowd was silent now, the tension palpable. As they prepared for the final match, Laia suddenly stood up. What are you doing? Zack asked. Invoking my right as the contested prize, she declared loudly. In my culture, I may choose to fight alongside my champion. What? Both Zack and Drakmore said simultaneously. Before anyone could stop her, Laia grabbed a controller. This is now a team's battle. That's not how, Drakmore started. Sacred traditions must be honored, she cut him off, using his own formal tone. Unless you wish to forfeit, the prince's face darkened. Fine, but I too shall have a partner. He pulled out a small device and spoke into it. A moment later, another portal opened, and one of his wives stepped through, an elegant woman with blue-tinted skin and sad eyes. Meet Karena, Drakmore said smugly, former gaming champion of the Andromedean League. Zack looked at Laia, who was holding the controller upside down. So, he whispered, about those gaming lessons I was going to give you. No time, she whispered back. Just tell me which buttons make the little warrior attack. They're all attack buttons? Perfect. The final match began. It was chaos. Karena played with fluid grace, her skills obviously legitimate. Drakmore had improved even further. And Laia played like someone who had never touched a video game in her life, but had extensive experience with actual combat. She mashed buttons with royal determination, occasionally shouting what Zack suspected were Tarnarian war cries. Your technique is flawed, Karena said quietly as her character danced around Laia's wild attacks. Perhaps, Laia replied, still pressing buttons randomly. But I choose to fight flawed and free rather than perfect and imprisoned. Karena's hands hesitated on her controller. You all have a choice, Laia continued. Even now, Earth has laws protecting against forced marriages, laws that extend to any sentient being seeking asylum. Silence, Drakmore snarled. But Zack noticed something. The prince's perfect rhythm was breaking. Your collection isn't about political alliances, Zack added, executing a complicated combo. It's about control. But you can't control everything, especially not here on our primitive little planet. Karena's character stopped moving entirely. What are you doing? Drakmore demanded. Choosing, she said simply, and set down her controller. What happened next would become legend in the competitive gaming community. Drakmor, enraged by the betrayal, abandoned all strategy for raw aggression. Zack, having downloaded the prince's patterns over 2 matches, was ready. And Laia, still button-mashing with royal enthusiasm, accidentally executed a perfect edgeguard at exactly the right moment. The crowd erupted as Drakmor's character went flying off the screen for the final time. This is impossible. The prince stood, his perfect facade cracking. I demand a rematch. No, Karenna said. Other portals were opening now, more of Drakmor's wives stepping through. No more demands. Laia stood as well, finally holding the controller correctly. You lost, Drakmor. By the sacred laws you yourself invoked. Now leave. The prince looked around wildly, seeing his collection dissolving before his eyes. You cannot. I won't. Actually, Zack interjected, I've been live streaming this whole thing. Right now, about 50,000 people are watching you lose to a primitive in Smash Brothers. Want to make it more embarrassing? Drakmor's face went through several interesting colors before settling on a sort of metallic purple. Without another word, he vanished through a portal. The gaming cafe erupted in cheers. Karenna and the other wives were already talking to Laia about Earth's asylum laws. Someone had ordered pizza. So, Zack said, turning to Laia, was that enough ritual combat for you? She pulled him close. It was the most honorable battle I've ever witnessed. Then she frowned. Though I still don't understand why the small pink creature can consume its enemies without dying of indigestion. That's Kirby. You know what? Let's save that explanation for our second date. Second date? Her silver eyes sparkled. You're assuming there will be more dates? Well, yeah. I still have to show you Star Wars, remember? She laughed, that musical sound that made his heart skip, and kissed him in front of everyone. The crowd cheered even louder. First, she said when they finally parted, you must teach me more about these video games. I find I quite enjoy ritual combat without the bloodshed. Deal! Zack picked up the controller she'd been using. Though maybe we start with something simpler. Mario Kart? Is that the one with the angry shells and the rainbow road to doom? You've been studying Earth games? I like to be prepared. She grinned. Also, your browser history was very educational. As they set up the next game, surrounded by cheering humans and liberated alien wives, Zack realized something. His life had become way more complicated since his birthday, and he wouldn't have it any other way. 1 month after the Smash Brothers showdown, Zack found himself explaining to Laia why people were dressed as superheroes at the city's biggest comic convention. So these aren't actually Earth's mightiest warriors? She frowned at a passing group of Avengers cosplayers. No, they're fans dressed as fictional characters. Zack adjusted his hastily assembled Han Solo costume. Like how I'm dressed as a space smuggler. I still don't understand why I couldn't wear my royal combat armor. Because people would think it's just another costume. He grinned. Though watching you try to explain to that Star Trek group that their uniform insignias were criminally inaccurate was pretty amazing. They were at the convention because Sarah, now appointed as unofficial Earth representative for the liberated alien wives, had arranged a panel discussion on women in science fiction. The fact that half the panelists were actual aliens was somehow the least weird thing about Zack's life lately. Look, Laia pointed excitedly. They have the pizza with the stuffed crust here. Before Zack could respond, his phone buzzed. A message from Danny. Emergency. Drakmor spotted entering convention center, and he's not alone. Laia? Zack showed her the message. Remember how you said he'd never show his face on Earth again after losing? Her silver eyes narrowed. He's more desperate than I thought. She grabbed his hand. We need to find the others. They made their way through the crowded convention hall, passing countless cosplayers who had no idea they were in the middle of an actual alien conflict. Mike and Sarah were already at their designated meeting spot, along with Karenna and several other ex-wives. He brought reinforcements, Karenna reported grimly. Mercenaries disguised as convention security. But why? Sarah asked. He already lost the ritual combat. Because the combat was never the real goal, Laia realized. He needed a Tarnarian royal marriage to legitimize his claim to... She stopped, eyes widening. The throne. This isn't about me. It's about my empire. What do you mean? Zach asked. My father is unwell. The succession is unclear. If Drakmor had married me before... She cut off as Danny came running up. Guys! He was out of breath. You need to see this. He held up his phone, a new one since Laia had crushed his last one. On the screen was a news feed from some alien network showing what looked like civil unrest on a distant world. The Tarnarian Empire is in chaos, Karenna translated. The Emperor is incapacitated. And look who's offering to restore order with his combined fleet. Drakmor, Leia hissed. He's using the confusion to stage a coup. But he still needs a legitimate claim to the throne. Which he'd get by marrying you, Zach finished. Even by force. I'd like to see him try. Mike cracked his knuckles. Actually, Danny said, I have a better idea. Ladies and gentlemen, Danny announced into the convention hall's main stage microphone, welcome to our special panel, Real Aliens Among Us, the truth behind science fiction. The crowd, already excited by what they assumed was an elaborate marketing stunt, cheered as Leia and the other alien wives took the stage. They were dressed in their full ceremonial regalia now, no longer bothering to hide their otherworldly nature. My fellow Earthlings, Leia began, her voice carrying that natural royal authority, and our guests from across the galaxy. She nodded to where several suspicious-looking security guards were positioning themselves around the room. Today we reveal a truth your world has long suspected. You are not alone. The audience went wild. Phones came out everywhere, live streaming the event, which was exactly what Danny had planned. For too long, certain elements have sought to keep Earth isolated, Leia continued, following their hastily prepared script. To dismiss you as primitives, unworthy of joining the galactic community. In the wings, Zach watched the security feeds on his laptop. Drakmor's forces were moving into position, probably thinking they had the perfect opportunity to grab Leia in the chaos. But they underestimated you, Leia was saying, your creativity, your resilience, your capacity for growth, and most importantly, she smiled directly into the cameras, your ability to stream content globally in real time. That was when Drakmor himself burst onto the stage, his liquid metal armor gleaming under the lights. The crowd, thinking this was all part of the show, cheered even louder. Enough of this farce, he declared. Lionera, you will submit to... To what? She cut him off. Your attempted coup? Your plot to seize my father's throne while he lies ill? The prince froze. How did you? No, Karenna stepped forward. Did you think your collection never talked amongst ourselves? That we didn't notice your communications with the rebel factions? More phones were recording now. Danny's virus had already hijacked the convention center's Wi-Fi, broadcasting everything to both Earth and alien networks. Your people are watching, Drakmor, Leia said coldly. Both yours and mine. Would you like to explain to them why you're threatening a royal heir on a primitive world? The prince's perfect facade cracked. You think this changes anything? I have forces in position throughout this building. One word from me? Oh, you mean these forces? Mike's voice boomed through the speakers as the main screen lit up, showing security camera feeds. Each one showed convention security, the real ones, quietly subduing Drakmor's disguised mercenaries. Fun fact, Danny added from his position at the tech booth. Turns out Earth's primitive facial recognition software is really good at spotting aliens in disguise, especially when they forget about Instagram filters. It's over, Leia declared. Your coup has failed. Your collection is free. And Earth... She gestured to the cheering crowd. Earth is now officially part of the galactic community under the protection of the Tarnarian Empire. A new portal opened at the back of the hall. Through it stepped a contingent of what could only be the actual Imperial Guard, their armor far more impressive than any cosplay. Prince Drakmor, their leader announced, you are under arrest for conspiracy against the Empire, attempted kidnapping of a royal heir, and... He checked something on a holographic display. Illegal downloading of Earth entertainment content without a proper license. You can't. Drakmore looked around wildly. This is a primitive world. They're not even unified under a single government. No, Zach said, stepping onto the stage. We're not. We're messy and divided, and we spend way too much time arguing about pizza toppings. But we also created something your advanced civilization never did. And what's that? Drakmore sneered. Social media. Zach grinned. Check your space Twitter equivalent. The prince's golden eyes widened as he presumably accessed some alien network. The hashtag #real aliens at Comic-Con was trending globally, along with #Drakmore is over party. Impossible, he whispered. Take him away, Leia commanded. The Imperial Guard moved to comply, but she held up a hand. One moment. She walked up to her former fiancé. I want you to remember something, Drakmore. You lost everything because you underestimated love, freedom, and the power of Earth's primitive technology. Also, she smiled sweetly, you're really bad at Smash Brothers. The crowd erupted in cheers as Drakmore was led away through the portal, his perfect features twisted in rage. Well, Danny said as things calmed down, I guess this means Earth is officially not alone in the universe anymore. Indeed. The Imperial Guard commander approached Leia. Your Highness, with the prince's plot exposed, your father's recovery assured, and Earth's existence now public knowledge, you are needed back home. The Empire awaits its heir. Everyone turned to look at Leia. She stood there, every inch a princess, looking out at the sea of humans with their phones and costumes and endless enthusiasm. No, she said simply. What? I said no. Leia's voice was firm. My father will recover, and when he does, I will explain why Earth deserves a place in the galactic community. But I will not rule the Empire. But the succession can pass to my cousin. She always wanted the job anyway. Leia moved to stand beside Zach. I choose Earth. I choose freedom. I choose... She looked at him with those silver eyes. I choose love. The crowd absolutely lost it. Even the Imperial Guard commander seemed moved, though it was hard to tell under his helmet. Besides, Leia added with a grin, I still haven't beaten Rainbow Road in Mario Kart. That would be a disgrace to my royal training. 3 months later, Zach found himself sitting in his parents' living room, trying to explain why his new girlfriend had just accidentally crushed their steel dining room chair. She's just really into CrossFit, he offered weakly. CrossFit, his mother repeated, staring at the mangled furniture. And I suppose CrossFit is also why she glows in the dark? That's just a really good skincare routine? From the kitchen, there was a sound of something else metal being bent, followed by Leia's voice. Beloved, your food preparation devices are most inefficient. I have improved them. Zach's father lowered his newspaper. Son, does this have anything to do with that aliens at Comic-Con thing that went viral? Would you believe me if I said no? Zach, his mother said patiently, she's green. It's a medical condition? The doorbell rang. Saved by pizza delivery, Zach thought, until he heard the delivery guy's greeting. Your most radiant highness. Your royal pepperoni pizza with extra cheese has arrived. Joe? Zach's mother asked. From Joe's Pizza? Why is he bowing? Leia swept into the room, pizza box in hand. Joe understands proper protocol, and he makes the best pizza in the quadrant. Quadrant? Zach's father repeated faintly. Perhaps we should just tell them, Leia suggested, settling onto the couch next to Zach with royal grace. They are to be my Earth parents, after all. And so they told them everything. The birthday surprise, the space chase, the video game tournament, the comic convention revelation. By the end, Zach's parents sat in stunned silence. Well, his mother said finally, I suppose this explains the application for interstellar asylum I found in the mail. Yeah, turns out Earth's immigration system wasn't really set up for alien royalty, Zach admitted, but Sarah's working on it. At least she has a good job, his father offered. Being a princess is a solid career choice. Former princess, Leia corrected, though I retain my royal gaming privileges. Later that evening, back at their new apartment, fully equipped with plasma shields just in case, they settled in for their nightly gaming session. No, don't use the blue shell, Laia shouted at the TV. You primitive racing simulation, I command you to Argadur her. The controller cracked in her hands. Again. That's the third one this week, Zach noted, trying not to laugh. Oh, your Earth technology is fragile, she muttered. Like your Alexa, who, by the way, still refuses to acknowledge my royal status. Alexa, address Leia as Your Highness, Zach tried. I don't understand that command, Alexa replied. You see, Leia pointed accusingly at the device. She deliberately defies me, and she speaks to you far too familiarly. Zach couldn't hold back his laughter anymore. You know, most girls worry about their boyfriend's ex-girlfriends, not their AI assistants. Most girls cannot bend titanium, she reminded him, but she was smiling. Besides, I have more important concerns now, like mastering this Fall Guys game. The little beings are adorable, but their physics engine is clearly programmed by sadists. Zach watched as she grabbed a new controller, her silver eyes intense with concentration. 3 months ago, his biggest worry had been debugging code. Now he was helping an alien princess navigate Earth's immigration system, explaining human culture, and regularly replacing gaming equipment. Hey, he said suddenly, do you ever regret it? Choosing Earth? Choosing me? Leia paused her game and turned to him. Do you remember what you said when we first met? When I asked if you were strong enough to protect me? I think I said something about just starting self-defense classes. Yes, you were honest about your limitations. No pretense, no grand promises. She took his hand. That's when I started falling in love with you. Because you showed me that true strength isn't about bending steel or ruling empires. It's about being genuine, being free to choose. Even if those choices involve getting repeatedly beaten by Rainbow Roads, that Rainbow Road is clearly a violation of multiple galactic treaties, she grumbled. Then she grinned. But yes, every choice, every defeat, every victory, they're all mine to make, and I get to make them with you. That's actually really beautiful. Indeed. She leaned in to kiss him, then pulled back with a frown. Though we really must discuss Alexa. What did she do now? She keeps playing love songs when you're coding. It's highly suspicious. As Leia launched into another theory about AI assistants and their potential romantic intentions, Zach smiled. His life had become a bizarre mix of alien politics, video games, and explaining Earth customs to a former space princess. And he wouldn't change a single frame of it. Dear listeners, thank you for joining Zach and Leia on their incredible journey from an unexpected birthday surprise to a love story that crossed the stars. In a universe of advanced technology and galactic empires, they showed us that sometimes the most powerful force isn't plasma weapons or quantum drives. It's the courage to choose love, even when it means giving up a throne for pizza and video games. Their story reminds us that true connections can form in the most unexpected places, whether it's over a game of Smash Brothers or while running from space cops. It shows us that what others might see as limitations, being primitive or ordinary, can actually be our greatest strengths. But perhaps most importantly, Zach and Leia's adventure isn't just about aliens and humans finding common ground. It's about recognizing that real nobility isn't in titles or technology, but in the freedom to be authentically ourselves and love without boundaries. Even if that means occasionally crushing controllers in excitement or being jealous of AI assistants. Would you like to see more of their story? Perhaps explore how Leia adjusts to Earth life, or how Zach handles meeting her royal family? Maybe discover what happens when other alien civilizations start sending their own tourists to this surprisingly influential, primitive planet? Or see how they deal with their first serious relationship challenge, teaching Leia to play Dark Souls? If you enjoyed their tale and want to see where their adventure goes next, let me know. After all, in a universe this vast, their story is just beginning. And remember, somewhere out there, a former alien princess is probably still trying to beat Rainbow Road while accusing Alexa of flirting with her boyfriend. What would you like to see next in their cosmic romance? Share your thoughts and ideas in the comments below.